It's been a while, but I knew it had to be this one. I didn't realize till before we started watching this that you hadn't gotten the trailer for this, so you went into it cold.
I went into this completely blind.
That's because I got...
Christopher Walken was a nice surprise. I'll give the movie that.
Yeah, when you were surprised when he showed up, I kept reminding you.
Cheech Marin is just sad,
Marin is in this.
But Christopher Walken was a nice surprise.
Uma Thurman is in this film.
Jane Seymour for reasons.
Rob Riggle, but that makes sense. I would have been surprised if he wasn't in this movie. So, in the few weeks that movies were back in movie theaters, this was, in fact, I think this might still be planned for a theatrical release. I'm not sure, in like a week or so. But this...
I can't imagine going to a movie theater and this is the last thing I saw before getting COVID.
What was funny is because...
Like, I would not risk my life for this movie, I can tell you that much.
This trailer was in front of everything because it was one of the only major releases that was going to be coming out. Wow. So it didn't matter if you were seeing Tenet or one of the religious movies, it would have the trailer for The War with Grandpa in front of it. And at the end of it, it would say, like, exclusively just in theaters, as if this is a VIP movie.
This is it.
Yeah.
War with Grandpa.
This is going to bring everyone back to the movie theater.
Oh, God.
And, like, every time I saw the trailer for this, it kept making me think, like, this looks like it could potentially be this year's Playing with Fire. I should ask Rob if he wants to watch this.
I know Playing with Fire.
Yeah.
I grew up with Playing with Fire.
Mm-hmm.
War with Grandpa, you are no Playing with Fire.
It would have been better if we saw it in a theater with a bunch of old ladies in it. Like
it still was nowhere near as bad as Playing with Fire, and on that level, that made it not as good as Playing with Fire, because Playing with Fire, like, I'll take that one to the grave. I will never forget that movie. This one,
I'll forget this movie.
Give it a year, and I've probably forgotten it.
But this
already.
movie's not good.
No.
This movie
it's not good. I'm just saying it's no Playing with Fire.
But like Playing with Fire, a couple ways I'll compare it to that. One, our heads kind of sank in the opening.
In the first 5 seconds, it did it again. This time it wasn't the song.
It was the credits.
It was the credits, which had this Looney Tunes Super Mario Brothers style font. Like, I really expected to say press start, and then I was going to be a little Mario raccoon flying.
Where the letters bounce into place, you know, with a bright blue...
I thought it was going to be like the opening of Super Mario Brothers 3, where the turtle shell drops and doing this whole little performance. Like,
It looked like the credits we would get in front of something like Arctic Dogs, or like one of the animated knockoff movies, like Ratatouille or something like that. Not a movie that has half the cast of The Deer Hunter in it.
That was bizarre.
And this also reminds me of a type of movie from the 90s, like Playing with Fire was to Bushwhacked. Mm-hmm. This is in that league of 90s movies where there was that small time when there were movies like, remember Man of the House with Jonathan Taylor Thomas and Chevy Chase?
I never saw it, but I know what you're talking about.
Like that, where it's like, he's the stepdad, he's moved in, and now he and the kid want to... Or, Getting Even with Dad, the Ted Danson, Macaulay Culkin one, where it was like, we glued a ponytail on Ted Danson's head, and Macaulay Culkin's got a mullet. Come see us in theaters.
It's kind of like that, and also... It feels like it's definitely another one like Playing with Fire. It's like, this is decades too late. But I get less 90s out of this and more like this was a lost Frankie Muniz project.
Oh, it has a sitcom
because it's got that sitcom-y Malcolm in the Middle. Sort of, only Malcolm, like, I'm not dissing Malcolm in the Middle. Malcolm in the Middle is legitimately an awesome show. But, like, in that same vein of, like, this was an early 2000s sitcom. Yeah. That they were trying to launch a pilot for, and I felt like we were watching the pilot.
The writers have a lot of sitcoms to their names, and even the setup of it is very sitcom-like, because the setup is all basically told to us in cutaways.
This had more cutaways in the first 5 minutes than an episode of Family Guy. I was just like, so all the cutaways, and the weird thing is a lot of the jokes would have played funnier if they weren't cutaways, but things that just, you would cut... Like, the movie will say, oh, like, I'm going to do something, and then it'll do it as a flashback. I'm like, oh, it would have been better if that was a jump cut to the future.
Yeah. Them
doing something stupid. Not that I would have saved it, but God, this movie's so weird. It's trying there's two movies. There's this Family Channel style Pax kind of just family movie with Grandpa lost his wife, now he's trying to get along with the grandkids and he's moving in. And then there's this weird Home Alone style movie kind of going on with all these pratfalls and stuff. And I'm like, it's not good, but I was kind of I kind of like the sweeter movie it was trying to tell, where Robert De Niro was just kind of the nice grandpa who's stuck moving. And then it turns into this Home Alone movie, and I'm like, oh, it's weird. That's actually where it starts sucking. Whereas the Home Alone itself, I actually like all aspects of that movie.
Yeah.
So.
And this was, when it was trying to do the sweetest stuff, is when you had some of its most unintentional laughs. Like when Grandpa and grandson are having their heart to heart at the end, and the grandson's like, well, maybe we took things too far. And Grandpa goes, no, I had a good time. It kept me distracted, since my wife died.
What? Or when he's taking the kid out fishing, and I'm like, I saw Godfather too. I know how this is gonna end. There was a lot of unintentionally funny shit where we were just writing a much fucking darker movie, particularly once Walken got involved.
When Christopher Walken comes in and dressed like Santa Claus, which this is an entire movie set up to make us quote Batman Returns.
Yeah, no, not only that, but I will say this, in this movie's defense, and it's the only defense I will give, it made me think of Christopher Walken as a mall Santa.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you know what? Thank you. That was your one gift to cinema, was just the mere image of that. You shoot your eye out, kid. Stab you in the face with a soldering iron. That was another funny thing. His first line, I remember sitting there turning to you, and I'm like, Christopher Walken's first line, I remember turning to you and saying, wow, that is the best Christopher Walken impression Christopher Walken has ever done. It's like he's doing an impression of himself now. And then he's just oh, zowie, wow, woo, hey, welcome, come on in. It's so over the top, even for him. I'm just like, I love it.
And you started doing because Cheech Marin is one of the friends, and you started doing a Walken and Cheech Marin routine.
Hey, so where's Dave? Dave ain't here, man.
You're right. It's can we just get a movie with these guys just hanging out with each other?
No, Christopher Walken has all these great moments on the side. Afterwards, when they do the dodgeball game, he's like, "Is there a bar in here?" And I'm just like, I just want to follow him.
I know, because it's a movie that has. Okay, it's got Cheech Marin, Uma Thurman, and De Niro. It's got a Tarantino cast, but in a Little Fockers universe. Even Little Fockers had a Tarantino cast. That had Harvey Keitel in it.
Yeah.
What is with movies I don't know. De Niro's back to doing this kind of De Niro movie. It's there was some great ones in the last couple years between Irishman and Joker, but we gotta go back to the kids movie, De Niro.
I don't know how to use my tablet. I'm old. There's strange things it gets having an old man as a father now.
Yeah.
It gets a little offensive sometimes. Where it's Jesus, my dad. There are times where my dad has to ask me how to do certain things electronically. On Facebook and stuff, but there's so many times where he's completely competent, and I'm like, why is every single old person in a movie like this? It's a newfangled contraption. I don't know.
And you pointed this out too, and I never thought about this until you pointed it out, where he's an old guy. He's a 70-year-old man.
Written as a 70-year-old man would be 30 years ago.
Because he's listening to the Andrews sisters or something.
Yeah, he's listening to some song that Captain America would have been listening to in 1943, and I'm like, dude, I don't know how.
Sorry, we can't handle this newfangled phone technology.
The ghost didn't like that one. I don't know how old De Niro is, but he's got to be with. Yeah, he's in the same age range as my father. My father doesn't listen to old 40s tunes because he was born in fucking 1946 or something. He would have been 1 year old. Like but the stuff my dad like loves and thinks about is stuff from his childhood would have been the 50s, and stuff from that he would listen to would be more like the 60s or something. I'm like, why is he listening to? Because this is how old people are.
Yeah, like my dad's listening
if this movie was written
Rolling Stones
in 1990,
well, yeah, like because it's presented like a sitcom where it just sort of throws you into the situation that is the plot. I see it a lot on like the bad sitcoms now. Like we watched the pilot for that Man with a Plan, the one with Matt LeBlanc, where it just starts out and in the first few sentences you get the synopsis of the whole show, where they're like, well, kids, gather in here, mom's going back to work and dad is staying home, so let me get you to school. Oops, I crashed.
Like my favorite is like Hooked on a Feeling, when that song started hitting the rounds again because of Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. Like my dad was like, oh, I remember we used to actually play that in the band. I'm like, oh, sorry, Dad. Weren't you listening to like something from like 1938?
Yeah.
God.
Just sitting there like quiet, listening like by the wind, like it's the opening scene from The Irishman.
I feel like whoever the writers were, their parents must still be alive in about 98. Yeah. That's all I can figure, and that somehow it got tossed to Robert De Niro. But
it doesn't help with this movie that, aside from De Niro and his friends, it's hard to really identify with anything in this, in that this is a movie about the world's most entitled little shit.
Oh my God. He plays it to, like, I just got done watching Bly Manor, and that's what I feel like. I feel like I'm watching, like, some kid who's possessed.
Yeah.
Like, or I feel like it's Umbrella Academy, where you got the 50-year-old guy living in, like, the 13-year-old's body, because that's what he talks like. I'm like, this is an adult writing for a kid, and, like, it would work in something like Malcolm in the Middle, because Malcolm's supposed to be, like, a super genius or something, but I'm like, why is this kid talking like this? He just seems like an ordinary kid.
He's just whining that his grandpa is staying in his room now, and now the kid is in the attic. And at first it's like, well, this does seem like kind of an annoying situation because there's a rat in the attic and there's bats and it's like dripping, but that seems fixed relatively quick, to the point to where his attic room starts looking way better than the room that he used to stay in. And still, so, like, I don't care.
The kid is clever enough to declare war on his grandpa and come up with all these pranks, and not clever enough to, one, realize that grandpa doesn't like living there either, and that this is all mom's doing. So he doesn't realize that he should have declared war on his parents.
And it's instant. It's instant that this plot sets in. The plot of De Niro having to move in is told to us in cutaways. The plot of the kid being at war with his grandpa is introduced in like 5 seconds. There's not even really a conversation with he and his grandpa about it. It's just, I blame grandpa for this, so I'm going to start messing with his shit.
The second problem I have is that they reveal later that grandpa's like an architect or something. I'm like, this family is like, this family would make Chris Columbus families look poor.
Yeah.
And in his movie, it's always some entitled, like, between Mrs. Doubtfire and just every single movie he does, or Home Alone, it's like the richest, whitest family. Jesus, man, they got nothing on this family. This family is loaded. And I'm like, why didn't, kid, you just talk to your grandpa and be like, hey, you're bored. Mm-hmm. Why don't you help rebuild the attic? Like, I don't get it. That was the other thing, like, why does the kid need to live in a shitty attic when they've got literally enough money to turn summer into Christmas outside to give this 5-year-old girl a birthday party that makes the My Little Pony party in Playing with Fire look like a poor man's routine?
It's like a celebrity like birthday party.
It's like, a celebrity birthday.
It's the birthday party.
Thurman's kid's birthday party.
It's the birthday party like that Joan Crawford threw for Christine at the beginning of Mommy Dearest. Only if Thurman didn't beat her child.
The most 1%er birthday party I have seen in a long time.
And then they try to make you cry over this because as soon as like this part,
Christmas tree was ruined. I'm like, they fucking turned your backyard into Santa's village, complete with real snow.
Yeah, I'm like, kid, you're fine. Like, as soon as a party was introduced, I knew where it was going. I'm like, they're going to mess something up. It's going to ruin this party, and that'll be like the third act breakup of this movie. But what happens is, like, the bouncy castle gets destroyed. De Niro gets shocked by the Christmas lights. A tree knocks down part of the house.
That was the only funny bit, where the tree knocking down the house reveals the two teenagers making out. Like, I'm like, okay, that actually got a slight laugh.
The tree knocking down part of the house, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, that's worth getting pissed off and annoyed over. But
the little
girl comes out.
My Christmas tree.
My cake, my birthday Christmas cake. I'm like,
oh
kid,
my God, kid,
you're fine. You're fine. Oh my God.
I don't know. That shit annoys me because we did not grow up with money, and I'm just like, man, if you get a cake, like, that's a birthday to me, and I'm just like watching this unfold. Like, they fucking like Christmas. Like, I thought Mrs. Doubtfire was over the top with the whole rap party and the fucking donkey, and I'm like, wow, that was fucking Skid Row compared to this house. Like, it is so bizarre. So yeah, they've got all the money to do that. It's supposed to cost like thousands. And I'm like, but they're making the kid live up in like the attic that looks like one of those like failed orphanages out of like some Charles Dickens story.
Well, every member of this family is crazy because not long afterwards, Uma Thurman turns into Beatrix Kiddo to chase down her daughter's boyfriend.
She went like this. And I'm like, she's gonna do it.
And it has the most random running gags in it. Like, there are running gags. You won't think that something will be. You think it'll just be like, oh, just some sophomore joke. Oh no, it'll come back a few times. Like De Niro accidentally showing his dick somehow to Rob Riggle, where he'll be twice. He'll be hanging from the gutter, and then his pants come down. And then at one point he's in the bathroom, I think, and his pants come down. Yep. Really, it's weird because it's like the scene is over, but then his pants will come down. Uma Thurman accidentally throwing stuff at... things keep happening to Uma Thurman in her car as a result of these pranks that they're doing. For instance,
so she keeps throwing stuff on a cop, basically.
Yeah.
The cop's like, she's like, over.
Ew, like they did something to the coffee, and she's like, ew, coffee. Looks over, ooh, motorcycle cop.
Snake.
The snake,
looks over, motorcycle cop. Gotta give that cop credit. He's got a snake slithering on him. He's like, oh, you. Like, pull over.
It's like, well, it's good they brought back the running gag of the being next to somebody at a traffic light, like in Suburban Commando. And remember that when he kept pulling up to the same girl, like his car kept getting more disheveled throughout the course of the movie.
That movie was more entertaining than this.
It was.
It's not a good movie, but
no.
I don't know. It's just so weird because it tries too hard. Like, I'm like, the sweet parts of the film, I'm just kind of like, are competently made.
To watch on TV.
Yeah, to watch on TV. Like, they're just
not on a big screen.
But I was expecting, like, Playing with Fire, where that was just so incompetent on every level.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, even the cinematography wasn't competent in that movie. I'm just like, yikes. This one, it's like, at least it's TV competent.
Yeah. How did Playing with Fire look when you watched it on TV versus in the theater? I mean, I'm not saying
not good.
I'm not saying it would look good, but was there like a...
No, I mean, not good. Like, seeing it again, I'm just like, yeah, like, it maybe because the film was just edited so poorly because of all the production hell, but I'm just like, yeah, none of these shots make sense. Here I'm like, well, I mean, it's very rote. It's like over-the-shoulder shots, just very basic. But I'm like, well, it's competently made. Like, it's not. I've seen worse. I'm like, if this were on TV as a sitcom, I'd be like, it's fine.
It looks like a TV. It looks like something like that Jenna Fisher show, like Splitting Up Together or whatever that's called.
There's no weird fisheye lens shot.
No, there's nothing like that.
Sabretooth singing My Little Pony or so that's the thing. But then again, that was so bad it stuck out more.
Yeah.
So I'm like. I don't know what is. I feel like this one, For us, this one was kind of worse in the sense that it was more boring.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're a grandparent, though, my only slight recommendation for this would be, I feel like grandparents who have to get stuck taking their grandkids to see something are probably going to like this one more, because it tries to be something occasionally. That and fucking Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
But, like, the acting is just generally better.
The same audience that was there, which I think there was maybe only 2 other people there, but that the older audience that was there for that, what was that called? The one with Tommy Lee Jones and Morgan Freeman, where it was it was the movie where Irving and I were saved because the fire alarm went off like halfway into the movie. I know which one you're talking about. Oh man, I should remember this because it took me a year to watch the whole thing. Because eventually we watched the second half of the movie. Like, yeah, it's one of those. So I'm sure my grandma would probably like this, but she'd probably also like Playing with Fire. Although there's not as much.
I don't think the grandparents that we got saddled with at Playing with Fire liked Playing with Fire.
No,
they sounded very annoyed. I feel like this one
that's
they
got
would be
more
like
shit jokes in it.
I feel like this one they'd be like, oh, that's cute.
This
There's
has
like a number of scenes where I could see like grandparents being like, oh, well, that's cute.
Yeah.
Like, and the fact that they give De Niro like empathy. The kid's really
the kid is so
unlikable. I thought this was going to be like a Dennis the Menace thing where Grandpa's also a douchebag, but I'm like,
no, not at all.
Grandpa's completely reasonable in this movie,
and like, and the kid is so in the wrong and so entitled and a little brat. It's one of those plots that would be solved so quickly by Grandpa hitting his hand upside the back of the kid's head.
Well, I would think if the kid's pissed off, he asks, like, well, why me and not my sisters? There's actually more room in the attic for 2 girls than there's...
Oh, yeah.
There's just all these things where I'm just like, because I was thinking, like, okay, like, I was a snot-nosed kid once. I'm like, what would I think? And I'm like, yeah, Grandpa's the last person I would start a war with first over this. Like, there's so many other places to go and to do to try to get out of this situation that I'm like... Well, why start a war with Grandpa? I'm just like, my sisters are the ones who are getting the nice room.
Because they had to show us the cutaway of the sisters.
And the awesome birthday party, by the way.
Yeah. The sisters shushing each other for 5 minutes. So like, the sisters don't even get along. Cutaway. Shh, 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 shh. Back and forth with one of them's on the phone, one of them's on the computer. And then, but then it also ends like a horror movie, though. It has a slasher movie stinger at the end of it.
It was so fucking weird.
Yeah.
Did we just spoilers, or?
Yeah.
I mean, who cares? It's fucking
It's the war with Grandpa.
Okay, so the final shot, I mean, big surprise, the war is over. And they work something out. And then, so Grandpa had taken the kid fishing earlier, in a scene where the kid thought that he was going to get killed by Grandpa, and I thought, this is hilarious. It's turning into Godfather 2, literally. But they have a good time. So at the very end, Grandpa hooks up with Jane Seymour, who we met once, and then invited her to go play dodgeball against the kids one time. So he goes out with Jane Seymour, and he's like, yeah, sorry, kid, I can't take you fishing. We'll get gelato or something. We'll see a movie. We'll do something else some other time. So the kid, instead of feeling happy for his grandpa that he's found somebody, stares out at the two of them and has this, like, Damien glare from The Omen. Like, I really want them. He's like, Lectus Dominus Ave Satani.
Like, it's setting up the events of The Good Son all of a sudden at the end. Like, and it just slowly fades to black.
Yeah.
Ominously.
It ominously fades to black with this music and this evil glare, and then out of nowhere, the goofy music and the Looney Tunes font. Yeah. This Looney Tunes font, directed by... I'll say this... you go ahead.
There was... the only other thing I got with this is, like... Probably the biggest, it wasn't even a big laugh, but a laugh I got out of this was the bullies in the movie. Because of course it's got bullies, and they're
so
over the top.
Hilariously one note.
Yeah, like, but they're, like, bullies are such a crutch on these kind of movies nowadays, but in this, it was almost intentionally written to be...
It's like, almost like, it's like the actor and the writers are just like... just give us the most bottom of the barrel basic bully performance.
Yeah.
To where he literally just comes up, pours something on the kid's head and just goes, oops, that happened. And that's all he does. There's no explanation. There's no nothing. He just comes up to random kids. Oops, that happened.
I appreciated that because it was almost done tongue in cheek.
Yeah,
whereas, like,
it's like
there's no motivation behind
they
this
fucking
guy.
knew.
Yeah, there's no motivation behind this guy. He just pops up. He has no reason for doing this. And what he does just is for no reason, to where I was like, all right, like, I kind of like this because it's just this bully with no purpose.
I kind of liked it too, just because he was such a cartoon character.
Yeah.
It was kind of amazing. I'm like, well, he is owning. He's like Jack Black in Neverending Story 3.
Yeah.
He's just fucking owning it.
Yeah.
And then my favorite is when they get the pay when it's De Niro and Cheech, Marin, and Walken versus the bully, and they get the payback. And the way the two of them show up, and the bully's just like, well, what is this? It's like, yo, here you've been picking on this kid, and then like Walken in this hoodie behind him with his like. He looks like Emperor Palpatine because his face, as he's getting older, it's starting to sag, and he's just like, yeah, we like to have fun too. And it's like, I would have shit myself if Christopher Walken behind me with his eyes hidden underneath a hoodie and you only saw his like creepy jowls just showed up like that. I would have been like, oh shit.
They just chucked this kid in this fly and trash-ridden dumpster with shit in it, and like, God.
It's one of my favorite Walken lines ever. Yeah, and he does the thing where he like moves his hand like this. We like to have fun too.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm just like, he is going full Walken on this. So I give it that. Like, and Walken is the mall Santa. How? Like,
That just made me want to see like a bad Santa movie with Christopher Walken in it.
so I don't know. There's random things, but yeah, no, this wasn't as bad as Playing with Fire, and therefore I would argue it's not even as good.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, it was, I know, it was just like what it felt like watching whenever I do like a binge watch session on the fall premieres, and this would be like just one of the throwaway family pilots on minus a laugh track. That I would watch and probably give like a D+ to, and not think about it much after that, really. Like this, I mean, granted, it's not like very many movies have been released this year, but I don't think this will make it on my bottom 10. But granted,
I mean,
not a lot's been
haven't-
released this year.
I know, I haven't seen shit this year, so it's easily in my bottom 10, but...
Yeah. I'd have to think about it.
With the COVID, I haven't been able to see much.
This was... Jeez. Like, My Brother's Crossing was way worse than this. Tulsa was way worse than this.
I'll take your word for it. And those movies didn't have Christopher Walken.
Hubie Halloween was probably more competently made than this, but Hubie Halloween annoyed me way more than this movie.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. Maybe that's why I give it just some slight credit. This movie didn't annoy me as much as I thought. I was like, I'm just kind of bored.
Yeah, it felt like a movie happening.
Yeah,
there's a movie happening
like even
in front of us.
even the little girl,
Yeah.
who is easily the most annoying of all those kids, is still not as annoying as the one from Playing with Fire.
No, she
not even in the same ballpark.
She doesn't go the full Tulsa from that movie I saw a couple of months ago.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Oh my God.
My Christmas tree.
Hey, at least we know that if we need to make it snow in LA, that can happen.
Oh yeah, it's where they shoot all the Hallmark Christmas movies. It's why, like, in between takes, they have to take their jacket off because in reality they're sweating bullets.
Just does a party like that?
Well, this is still one though that was like, yeah, this was definitely one that you and I have to review. Sometimes I just get those trailers and I'm like, that's a me and Rob movie. War with Grandpa.
The weird thing is, actually, I'll say this. This is what's so bizarre about it. Playing with Fire is clearly meant for little kids. This movie feels like it's actually aimed at the grandparents.
I can see that. Yeah.
There's like, because I'm like, man, if I were a kid, I'm not sure I would be into this as much as you'd think. Like, some of the pranks, I'd be like, okay, but like, This really feels like it may have been more aimed at the adults, which is even more insane if you think about it.
Yeah, because when I was a kid, I saw Getting Even with Dad and Man of the House when I was a kid, and I didn't like those when I was a kid, and
I wouldn't have liked this as a kid.
Yeah.
Home Alone I adored as a kid.
Oh yeah,
This
yeah.
one, yeah.
Home Alone, totally. This is normally the part where I say, well, coming up next week, we'll be talking about...
Coming up next week, we cover the election. Oh, God.
I don't know what the next thing is I'm going to be reviewing. Whatever's trending. I think like Trial of the Chicago 7 comes out this weekend. I'll probably be watching that, so... I'm sure it's a slightly different movie than the one that we just watched.
War with 7.
Yeah. All right. See ya.
Later.